Do you believe in magic? I do. Wait, Brad, you're always talking about how this is an evidence-based, focused podcast. What do you mean you believe in magic? I believe in the magic of a good sleep. I mean, you felt it. While much of my PhD work looked at the influence of sleep on performance, I continue to be stunned by the difference a solid night's sleep can make. It's incredible. But as we'll learn today, it might not require magic to optimize our sleep. Welcome to the latest episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute, and today's guest is Dr. Chris Winter, sleep medicine specialist, neurologist, and best-selling author of The Sleep Solution and The Rested Child. If the question involves sleep in any way, Dr. Winter has the evidence-based answer. As we enter the holiday season, it is natural to start thinking about life in the coming year. If that life involves pursuing your certification as a health and wellness coach, it is not too early to book your spot for the January 29th and 30th certification training before it fills up. And that's one that almost always fills up early. If you've got questions about the program or how it might fit in your career plans, please reach out to us anytime. We can set up a time to discuss it. Email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com or the website catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And for those of you who like to work ahead, as soon as you get registered, you'll have access to all the other complimentary coursework that you can do at your own speed leading up to that, if it's something you'd like to do. Now it's time to sound the alarms and listen in as Dr. Chris Winter shares his extensive insights about sleep and all things surrounding sleep on the latest episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast. All right, Dr. Chris Winter, we've been working on this a long time. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited about it.
Thank you for your patience. I'm excited to be here.
So the power of sleep, I'll tell you, never ceases to amaze me. The difference between even a moderate sleep and a good sleep, it's like you feel like a superhero of some sort. Why is it so ridiculously impactful? This is not a marginal thing. This is huge stuff. Well, why is that?
I think it's just because sleep is such a dynamic process that's ingrained in everything we do. It's kind of like breathing, eating, it's really in that tier of things that it's not really optional. I mean, it's sort of the difference, like you said, of surviving on bread and water or thriving with, top shelf nutritional, things that you put into your body.
Yeah.
And the window that we have as humans about what sleep does for us is very limited. And one of the most common things people say in my clinic is, I just can't shut my mind off at night.
Right.
And your mind's going a million miles an hour at night. Your brain is so active at night that, the only time it's shut off is when you've died, So it would help if we kind of moved away maybe from that idea that when we go to bed, there's a little switch in our brain that gets turned off, that it's a huge dynamic process. It's helping us fight off infections. It's helping us digest and handle nutrients properly. It's helping us to correct, metabolic and mistakes, even at a DNA level. Because we know that people who, abuse themselves from a sleep perspective have a lot of health problems, even things like cancer.
Yeah. So
it's just one of those things where people really need to prioritize it if they're really trying to live their healthiest life.
And 60 minutes can make, if you're averaging 6.5, 7 hours and all of a sudden you get an 8, it is like that switch goes and you wake up and you go, all right, bring on the world because I'm ready to rock and roll. I don't know. Can you expound on that anymore? Because I'm just,
Sure.
I love sleep. I studied in my PhD program, but I'm still amazed personally at the impact it has.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that people also, I feel like if you said, look, we're going to, for your listeners, take a week or 2 week period and just add 15 minutes to your night. I think sometimes it's demoralizing when you go to your doctor and he's like, yeah, you got to lose 100 pounds.
Right.
You're like, oof,
So that ain't gonna happen.
Start with 5, and then after you've lost those 5 pounds, we'll move on to the next 5. So to me, sleep's kind of like that. If somebody's really busy, and the problem is sometimes sleep and success are at sort of at odds with each other. I just got back from LA doing some filming, and we were in this RV going from Phoenix to LA, and I was in this RV with all this crew, and we were all sitting around at the end of the day and just talking about their sleep habits, which was fascinating because this whole production is about people who sleep in unusual circumstances. Well, I thought the crew was an episode in of themselves. And, this one guy was saying he and his wife, do a little TV watching, she goes to bed, and then he starts editing, and he says, this is a time where I've got to myself, nobody's calling me. And, it's interesting because that kind of work ethic, you said your son's in medical school. I remember looking around medical school thinking, there's a lot of hardcore people here who can easily go all night without sleep and still put needles in people's necks the next day successfully. Like, it was a little scary and kind of terrifying looking back on it. But in the moment, you're kind of like, wow. And so, I think that circumstance of we reward the negative behaviors. Yes. I'm sure that guy got the job as producer because, man, give it to Keith. Right. I'm making up his name. Give it to Keith. And Keith will get all the edits of the 100 hours of filming done the next day. Yeah. But if you give it to Brad, it'll take him a week. Well, Brad's probably trying to get some sleep and live a life that goes beyond the age of 58. Right. So it's tough. So I always tell people, forget being optimal, figure out where you are and just move it a little bit and make that your new norm. And maybe in 6 months, I'll check in with you later. And it was funny. We were talking, the thing we were filming was we were embedded with a musical group of all crazy things. And at the end of it, we were saying goodbye to the group, and the lead singer went over and gave me a fist bump. And he went 15 minutes, which I love it because it wasn't like heroin. It was 15 minutes, which I thought was great for this guy in leather pants to be saying to me. So it'll be interesting, check back in and find out. But, I think I made a pretty decent case for that. But it's hard for a lot of people in a lot of different places to find that 15 minutes. But to your point, it's huge. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. We did like a promotional thing one time with some Fitbit. It wasn't Fitbit, but something like that. It was Withings, I think. And they had a thing where they wanted you to send in your data that showed that you got 8 hours of sleep 7 straight nights. So it was kind of like a game. Yeah. I remember telling my wife, we got to go to bed now because I got to get 8 hours because I'm like part of this promotion. I don't want to be like 4. Man, I felt great. And you're like, man, I feel great. Back to getting
exactly. Back to performing. Yeah.
Back to performing.
Love it. Right. We talk a lot about better than yesterday here, so that fits right in. It's not optimal. Ooh, we're looking that way, but better than yesterday, it's a starting point. So I love the 15-minute thing.
That's a great mentality. Yeah. I love that.
I told my kids they can put it on my gravestone, and they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know, Dad.
That's the one day it didn't work out.
All right. So what are some of the most common misconceptions about sleep people have that you've encountered in your journey? You talk to everyone, you get all the questions. What are the misconceptions where people think this and you're going, no?
I think everybody needs 8 is probably the most common.
Yeah.
I think 8's a great target. But if you constantly find that you're kind of going to bed at 10, alarm clock set for 6, and it always takes you an hour to fall asleep, if you're okay with sitting there an hour before you go to bed, I'm okay with it. I like being in bed awake. I think it's kind of a lovely situation to be in. But if it's frustrating to you, maybe your brain is telling you 7 is better for you. And that's okay. So we are in a world of, it's not misinformation, but it is this sort of, we push out a lot of information about average. 8 hours is what the average person needs. If you look at that little bell curve, 8 is probably right there in the middle, but that's a bell curve. Sure. So by definition, there's people on these wings here, and those people sometimes get a little bit harmed by that 8-hour message. So if you're a 7-hour guy, your partner's an 8-hour gal, and you want to go to bed and get your 8 hours, and you're always sitting there and you're frustrated because she goes to sleep right away,
Wait, have you been watching me?
Telling you you're going to die now because you're not sleeping like she is. And it's kind of like now you're going to bed with death on your mind. I got to fall asleep quickly or I'm not going to make it to see the Dune movie when it comes out soon. I want to see that. So anyway, I think that's a big one. I think another one that's important is the idea that people can't sleep. That phrase is everywhere. In fact, I collect articles that have it in their title. And I've got a great series of like Forbes, why 60 million Americans can't sleep, NPR, 70 million Americans can't sleep. Are you one of them? And then there was something else. It was like, there are 80 million Americans that are not sleeping. And here's why. Like, so I love the idea that over a 6-month period, we keep adding 10 million zombie army people to walking around not unable to sleep. And there's no such thing as an inability to sleep. Now, you may not be sleeping well or enough or in a way that's, optimal for you, but this idea that you can't sleep, or the bigger one is, well, I don't want to take this pill, doc, but if I don't, I won't sleep. Well, that's not true at all. You couldn't not sleep if you tried. And I feel like if that message got out there, like it may not be perfect, but you're going to sleep. Let's get rid of that idea that, the Michael Jackson can't sleep, so we'll send people to give him propofol at night. And, it's just a bad and not truthful pathway to follow, So I think that's a big one. And probably the last one is that just because you can do it doesn't mean you're good. So there's a lot of people, and this is, you probably see it in your world and talk to your son about this sometime. You're the trauma surgeon who's like, comes out of the call room after 30 minutes of sleep over the last 36 hours. Like, all right, let's go take somebody's spleen out. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, man. You have not slept since 2 days ago lunchtime, and we're gonna what? So oh no, I'm good. I got 30 minutes, man. I'm ready to rock and roll here. And there's this crazy mentality, and what I love is if you kind of divide people into 4 groups, you're across the top is sort of they've slept well, or they truly haven't slept well. But then there's a vertical axis of think they sleep well, think they slept poorly. And so the trauma surgeon's such a great example of not sleeping well, thinks they sleep great. And then there's people who sleep perfectly well, but are really upset about their sleep. And then there's people who their thoughts about their sleep and their actual sleep are pretty congruent. Like, I didn't sleep well last night because of my travel and, whatever. So anyway, there's some really interesting combinations of people out there, and those people kind of terrify me.
All right.
I just got driven back from a lecture last night. So I flew from LA to Philly, got driven up to a place about 2 hours away, gave a lecture, and then a driver drove me back last night. And so I'm like trying to politely interrogate him. So how's your sleep? And when did you last get it? And for how long? And so anyway, but no, he was a pro. Well, I was thinking about that too, with the band's bus driver.
Yeah.
They pull into the city, he goes right to the hotel room, and then they go sound check and do their thing. And then they're coming off the stage ready to go to bed. And he wakes up from his Marriott and walks into the bus and drives it to the next city. That's a lot of pressure, man.
Wow. Well, let's talk about one of those quadrants. So you mentioned one of them is they think they slept poorly. I'm guessing that caught my attention for sure, because I probably am in that camp sometimes. We probably have a lot of people in health and wellness listening to this saying, wait, what? Maybe I'm okay. Walk us through that quadrant and maybe what that looks like. The causes are probably an over focus on health and wellness performance potentially. And they've heard some things on sleep. They've read a book.
Calls it,
Say that again. I was over you.
There are a lot of people and we see a lot of people in our clinic, and that phenotype is sort of the slightly anxious or type A, successful, detail oriented, lots of traits that make somebody very successful in their life. But for whatever reason, they're not entirely satisfied with the way they're sleeping, or what often happens is there's something going on physically with them, fatigue, tired a lot, don't feel great, that you've decided is because you don't sleep well. So you buy the device, and you put a little bit of pressure on yourself. Oh, I'm not feeling so great lately, so I really got to get to bed and get some sleep. And you get in bed and you're awake for a while and you're not falling asleep quickly. So that starts to stir in your mind. So, when you look at sort of that insomnia model, those are definitely often people who on the spectrum of awful sleep, amazing sleep, feel like they're here, but they're actually here. And when you start to kind of logically dissect it, I don't sleep, Dr. Winter, you got to help me. I've been a terrible sleeper for years. I can't sleep, blah, blah, blah. Nobody can figure it out. Well, tell me about your day. Do you nap a lot? I'm so tired, but I can't nap. And I've tried and tried for years, but every time I lay down to sit there, I never fall asleep. Do you think that an individual who stretches out on a couch in the afternoon for years and can't fall asleep would be a way that somebody who is excessively sleepy or sleep deprived would behave? It's like, I'm starving, but I can't find anything to eat in this cafeteria. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a great idea of the belief of, hey, it looks like you're doing something that's making you unable to sleep during an Orioles game. Like, anybody can fall asleep watching an Orioles game. Like, come on, give me a break. So it's a lot of times it's dissecting that, and it's people who've put an over focus on their sleep. We talk about the difference between somebody who has a sleepless night and somebody who has insomnia is the interpretation. If I get into bed at night and it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep, I genuinely don't care. I'll either just sit there and meditate, think about something I'm working on, and how I'm going to apologize to Brad for, bailing on his podcast after trying to, Brad, just so you know, a listener, viewer, Brad is the nicest guy. And it is exactly as he portrays himself. Like, I'm just kidding. And clearly well slept because he's got the patience of a saint. But anyway, so I think that those things are really important. And a lot of times deconstructing that can really give somebody a more accurate view of their sleep, because as anxiety starts to creep into the process of sleep, a lot of things break down, including how we register the sleep, which I find fascinating. Asking a patient who I know how much they slept, like after a sleep study, how much did you sleep? And people who struggle with that box of good sleeper, but think they aren't, often dramatically underestimate their sleep, which is why these things are wonderful. For the first time, the consumer can actually get a bit more of an objective look versus their partner saying, why do you keep telling people at dinner parties you never sleep? Because every time I wake up and go to the bathroom, you're asleep. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just resting there with my eyes closed, or whatever your excuse is. And then these things are great because you wake up and think you slept an hour. The ring or the watch says, no, you slept 5.5, which helps people get out from under that first myth we were talking about of I can't sleep. Okay, well, 5.5 hours may not be perfect, but you are sleeping. So let's start and build from there.
Okay, so two follow-ups on that. One, the devices. Are they really that good? It seems like they're still dependent upon how much I'm moving in bed. And so if you are still, it thinks you're asleep. What's your experience? Are there a couple, I know you're not sponsored by anybody here, but are there a couple that you say, this one, we're seeing some good data?
Yeah, I think they all have something to give. I'm working on an article right now for Psychology Today. I do a blog on there infrequently. But I thought a really fun idea would be, I'm wearing a ring, I'm wearing a Withings watch, I've got a pad underneath my mattress, and then my bed itself tracks my sleep. So I was going to write an article about, okay, over the last month, how do these things sort of line up? And what you find is I think they're pretty good in terms of figuring out amounts of sleep.
Okay.
So if you think you slept an hour and your device says 5.5, actually believe the device.
Okay.
And I tell people all the time, so, even if your device just uses movement, which some of them do, a lot of them are using heart rate variability and other variables now to make it more accurate. Sleeping with your non-dominant arm, sitting there, wide awake with your non-dominant arm motionless is hard to do. Okay, so when we're done with this podcast, just go find a chair, put your arm on a table, and don't move it for the next 4 hours. Like, nobody's doing that. So yeah, you could fool it a little bit, but it's going to give you a pretty decent, look at your sleep, which for a lot of people can be extremely encouraging. They feel like, I'm not sleeping. I had a guy who said he was in Germany and didn't sleep at all the time he was there for 6 months. And I said, what do you mean by that? He's like, I didn't sleep. I was just awake the whole time. So you think you were awake for 6 months? And he did. And you're trying to keep your doctor face.
Really?
I see the world record for sleep deprivation is 11 days, and it was a sham, according to Dr. DeMint. He said he was constantly having these little micro sleeps and whatnot. But that was really, I can say it. And for some people, the expert saying, well, that's not possible is helpful. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like, well, you weren't there. Germany at that time was tough and I was really struggling. I get you were struggling, but you were sleeping, and we may agree or disagree. But sometimes these things can be really reassuring to people. Like, wow, I think that between what my partner's telling me and what that sleep doctor in Virginia said and what my wife is saying, maybe I am sleeping. And now you kind of ratchet down the anxiety of, okay, thank God I am sleeping. Okay, now we can kind of, so that way. And so for a lot of times those things can be really, but to your point, you made a point earlier where you talked about people paying too much attention to them and it becoming a source of performance anxiety. That can help too. That can happen too.
Sure. All right. You made another comment.
Good overall, if you're using it for the right reason.
Right. Okay. You made another comment earlier that I was like, wait a minute. We got to come back to that. You said, I love being in bed awake. And I'm thinking, dude, tell me your secret. Like, I'm laying there and the thoughts going through my head are, I've got so much to do today. This is, if I'm laying here for an hour, I could be up doing something else. This is not working. I'm going to need to try to grab a little bit of a nap to make up for this. And you're saying, I'm good. And you're the expert. So walk us through that thought, because maybe this can help a lot of us.
I think that's the secret to sleep, really, is not fearing being awake. Like right now, you and I are awake, and this is fun. This is great. Like I have no anxiety about this whatsoever. Why suddenly does being awake in your bed create so much angst? I did like an academic lecture on insomnia one time for a bunch of doctors, and it was kind of one of those free for alls. Do whatever you want. We just want you to come and talk to our doctor about insomnia.
Nice.
So I actually, the whole framework of the lecture was based upon the 1-star Amazon reviews I got of my first book, which are just, not to make fun of them. It was more instructive. Like I appreciate those reviews. I really do. They are a powerhouse of insomnia thinking. This guy has no idea what it means to be a tortured insomnia patient. This book is trash. He taught, it's just like, it is a living nightmare that clearly this doctor has no experience with. It's just, when you're thinking, if you took away the context and read it to somebody, you would think, oh, clearly this guy has been abducted and is in a hole somewhere, naked, chained to a wall. Like, you're like, if I said, no, he's in his own bedroom, it's 65 degrees, there's food in the pantry, he's next to the person he loves, he's got 3 TVs in his house, that's the tortured nightmare. He's just awake. And that thinking is extremely powerful, the way we interpret these things. So I tell people all the time, that rule, going back to myths, I hate that rule of get in bed, and if you're still awake 15 minutes, get up and go do something else.
Yeah. That's a common myth.
So in your case, what you just said, if you're thinking, I got a million things to do, I'm sitting here, I'm not falling asleep, then go do a few things. That's fine. But if you're somebody who's like, I'm not falling asleep, but I'm fine sitting here thinking about my celebrity crush or what that last episode of White Lotus meant or whatever's going on in your life, then stay there. Resting has a lot of benefit. And that's why I called my new book, The Rested Child, because I think we don't value rest. It's all like, get in bed. And if you don't become unconscious in the next 5 minutes, you're screwing it all up. You're a failure here. And resting can be incredibly restorative to our body and our mind. So, and everybody has dominion and control over that. So if I told everybody, hey, 15 minutes, that's fine. But if I work with a lot of athletes and I say, starting today, training camps, so NBA training camps getting ready to start. I tell all my athletes every day you find 15 minutes to rest. If you're a parent, get your kids to rest every day. Forget the nap time. They just need to rest. If they fall asleep, that's awesome. But if they don't, and they draw you a picture of what they think about, how much they love mommy or whatever. That's great too. That we need to get out from underneath this sort of, hey kids, get to sleep. And if you don't, you'll get sick and fail your spelling test. Like that's not the message we want to give people. That take 15 minutes out of your life every day, shut your door in your office, just close your eyes and think about your favorite vacation spot or where you like to go fishing or something you'd like to do with your kid. A great gift for your partner. I'm such a bad gift giver. I literally think about that probably 3 or 4 times a week. Like, because my wife gives me great gifts, like just what? Fantasy rock and roll camp. Wow. And I'm like, vacuum cleaner filter bag or something like, well, you're always talking about, whatever. Just the worst. But yeah. So I think that taking yourself off the hook and just learning to be in bed, understand sleep's going to be there for you. If you're waking up a lot, sweating and gasping for air, you might need to talk to you about it. But being awake in bed is okay. We were built to wake up some during the night.
Okay. All right. There's so much we've got to fit in here. So, and our daughter's a 5th grade teacher, so we definitely want to come back to your book. I love it. You talk about the difference between quality sleep and junk sleep. Can you walk us through what you mean between those two and why does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love this term junk sleep. And I think of the analogy of junk food. There's starving and then there's eating something out of a box that's got, 38 ingredients. And then there's, your organically heirloom sourced tomatoes on the, bread you made with spelt flour, whatever. So there is a spectrum there. And so I feel like the dialogue that we're having about sleep has gone from not too long ago, maybe when our parents were young, you don't even think about sleep. It's just like you just do it. I mean, it's a trait almost like, okay, you get up and sleep. And the farmer doesn't think about it too much. Oh my gosh, I gotta get good sleep tonight. My crops are going to die in the field. It was just, no, you just did it. And so now we're putting a lot of focus on sleep, and people are coming around to the idea that if I eat better, exercise better, a bit more mindful about things, good social interaction and support my life and sleep well, I can affect my longevity and the way I feel. And I think that we're kind of moving now to the sleep 2.0, which is all sleep is not created equal. And sort of moving beyond the sleep hygiene things that everybody knows, yet we still write about in magazines all the time. I get, writers all the time. Hey, we want to do an article about, should you sleep in the dark? Well, we're still doing that one. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about that. But, so I think everybody knows the sleep hygiene things. And if that worked, and solved your problem, great. But if it didn't, I think there's a big spectrum of I sleep versus I sleep optimally. And I think that's where we are now. So we don't think about sleep to now we believe sleep's important to, hey, maybe, the details of the sleep matter, the consistency, the environment, things of that nature. So that's kind of what it's like for the past couple of days riding around this van, and I've gotten junk sleep.
Sure.
I did sleep. In fact, I fell asleep so hard on that van one night that I think people were concerned about me. They're like, was he drinking? I don't think he was drinking.
Did he die?
I was like, no, guys, I wasn't drinking at all. I just sleep really hard. So don't, they were all like, oh my God, well, I'm the sleep doctor. How do I get up there and toss and turn? No, you just give me a bunk. And they put me in the worst little teeny bunk too. And like, that's the terrible bunk, and you sleep there. So I think that, but that was definitely junk sleep. Sleep on a plane, get the window and you got your sweater piled up there and I've got my foot wedged in, and I can sleep, but I don't think that if you were to measure it, and I do, and it's always cool to look at, sleeping in the car, being driven back all through the night, hoping that the driver stays awake, like not great sleep. So, and that's where people have to kind of look at those types of things and figure out, well, I'm going to be sleeping on a tour bus for the next 6 months. You're saying it's kind of junk sleep. How can I make it less so?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we're all trying to figure out too in our lives, and just make the sleep we're getting better, the exercise we're getting better, the nutrition we're getting better. Like I think that's what junk sleep means to me.
Okay, good. I think that's an easy way to remember it. What's the story on the over-the-counter sleep meds? We see so many ads, non-addictive, all this stuff. They make it so tempting, so easy. It's just like, I'm having trouble. Let me just pop one of these things or take a little swig of this. Thoughts? What do we need to know about that?
Yeah, I think you just said a 4-letter word, which was easy. That's definitely a 4-letter word in the sleep field. And it's really, to me, it's somebody who has not taken care of their body, who said, my friend from college came and visited me. We're the same age. He looks like a bodybuilder. He is in such good shape. He is so happy, and fitness is a big part of his life. I need to look like that by this weekend because my wife and I are going to a pool party for a cookout. Like, I need a pill. You know?
Right. Totally.
I think when you look at that, you would never think that's attainable quickly. That's going to take a little bit of diligence and commitment and consistency over a period of time to get there. And sleep's kind of like that. You know, for somebody who says, look, I lived in Germany for 6 months, I didn't sleep at all. The idea that during my hour-long visit with him, he's going to walk out, thanks, doc, I'm great now. It's not going to happen. There is a process that needs to occur. In fact, this is the time every year where I will get a call from a baseball team that says, we've made the playoffs. 3 of our guys really are struggling with their sleep. We need it fixed by the wild card game next Tuesday. You know, to me, the analogy I told one time, I was like, you know what you're asking me? You basically have called me and said that your city's run out of water and you need me to construct and build a reservoir at the local river so that we can get your town water. I mean, I can do it, but I can't do it by Tuesday. So you waited a little too long there. So, you know, I think that those pills are attractive, you know, and these things are built upon fear. It's like sleeping pills and test prep courses. They deal in fear, you know, hey, for $3,000, I'll reteach you what you just learned in your undergraduate pre-med classes. And so you can pass the MCAT. Right. Like I'm sure you're, you know, so, and those things are like, oh gosh, can I afford not to do that? Right. Because I don't want to fail this test. So fear drives people to make those decisions, especially when you're feeling like, if I don't get sleep tonight, I just saw a news report that says you could have dementia and heart disease and wrinkle prematurely. And so, right. I mean, it just, so those things are, but they're all just antihistamines typically. And we know that those things are not particularly effective, nor they can be dangerous. And there's some linkages in research that says, you know, chronic antihistamine use is linked to dementia itself. Mm. So when somebody comes to see us, we're really trying to create more of a, I always use the word, I can't think of a better adjective, like bulletproof sleep, like a confidence that I don't want you depending on, oh God, we're on the cruise ship and you forgot my pill bottle. I told you I have to have that. Like all of a sudden, forget it. Your night is screwed because you're terrified that the little bottle of whatever, your gummy bears or whatever, were left behind on the counter. I want somebody who's confident, like, oh, this is going to be an unusual night, you know, sleeping in this situation or whatever. I'm going camping or whatever, but I want people to approach it with confidence and no fear and understand that, well, maybe the crickets will keep you up at night, but you're eventually going to sleep. So there are reasons to use sleeping medications, shift workers, people who are, you know, traveling around the world, jet lag, maybe. But I think for the most part, we're trying to build something that's a little bit made of a little bit better stuff.
And is there any evidence of depth of sleep being affected by that? So yes, you fall asleep, but maybe you don't get the same depth when you go that direction?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of the sleeping pills suppress deep sleep. So they create sedation and sometimes amnesia, but they're not creating better sleep. And that's really gets to, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that really gets to this idea of what a lot of people will say to me is, look, I don't want to take this pill. I am like you. I'm against pills, but I've got a job where I manage 700 people. And so I've got to be my best the next day. So I actually can't afford not to sleep.
Right.
So they're using the medication because they feel like it's the key to their optimal performance the next day, that sleep it's giving. So when you start looking at the research of sleeping pills, I mean, the typical sleeping pill research study, when you look at it, is this pill will make you fall asleep 7 minutes faster and give you an average of 12 extra minutes of, I mean, it's trivial.
Interesting.
It's kind of like, well, I can't manage the 58 people in my office because last night I ate my turkey and all my mashed potatoes, but only half my green beans. I mean, you really think that the extra spoonful or 2 of green beans is the reason why you didn't screw up payroll for the month of September. So, and then when you actually look at the research on performance in sleeping aids, so forget about the sleep, that I don't think I've ever seen a study that shows sleeping pills affect performance. I've seen tons of them that say they worsen it. And to your point, a lot of sleeping pills suppress deep sleep. And you're like, well, who cares? What's deep sleep for? Well, deep sleep makes you feel not sleepy. And it's when our body really restores itself. We make growth hormone during deep sleep. If you're a kid, it makes you grow. If you're an adult, it keeps you young. It makes your body repair itself, protein synthesis in your muscles, strengthens your bones, fortifies your immune system. I mean, it does everything. So we want that growth hormone. I feel like as you watch somebody age, what you're actually looking at is a decline in deep sleep, which creates a decline in growth hormone. So let's get our deep sleep while we can. To take a medication that suppresses it makes absolutely no sense to me. People come to my clinic all the time. I said, do you know what you're taking? I don't know. He just gave it to me and said, I need it because I need to sleep better. Okay, well, let's talk about this pill you're taking. They have no idea.
Wow.
So so again, it's that measurement of sedation equals something good. Like I need to get in bed, become unconscious quickly because that's good sleep. And no, it's not. There's plenty of players, like NBA players, who hydrate so aggressively during the day. They wake up twice to go to the bathroom. They wake up, they go pee, they get back in bed, back to sleep, and their sleep's awesome. Even though they wake up once or twice a night to go to the bathroom, that's okay. You don't need to fear that.
Doc, this is huge. This is awesome. Okay, let's talk about your book, The Rested Child. It's a key time. Our daughter's a fifth grade teacher, as I mentioned. She tells me it's not unusual for students to be
teachers.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's amazing. It's not unusual for her students to be up till 2 or 3 in the morning. Not on a Friday, not once a week, like all the time. Is there anything that a parent or a teacher can do to help with that? Because I think the parents know it. The phones are pulling them in. I don't know. Any thoughts?
When you put that podcast together with teachers, I'd love to be a part of that. I find, so both my parents are teachers and my wife's a teacher. I love teachers. There has been a change, and I don't want to sound like the old guy who walked to school uphill every day. I'm starting to feel like that as I get older. But there has been a change in a lot of things, I think, and school kind of sits in the middle of it. I was looking at my son, one of my kids is a senior in high school, and I was looking at his homework and thinking, this looks more like what I was doing in medical school, and this was not what I was doing as a different animal college chemistry student. So I do think things are becoming more intense, but everything is. It's sort of like your baseball is not just practice twice a week with the dad who decided to coach and you play a couple games. It's
sports camps. Yeah, it's everything.
Sports camps, travel baseball. Let's drive to DC every weekend and spend the whole weekend there staying in a hotel and you're getting blasted 38-0. Like we could have gotten beaten this badly
locally.
I'm coming all the way up here and paying for what exactly? Better dirt on the field. I don't know. So, to me, everything's really intense. And I wrote in the book, I think every kid should be able to go to school, play a sport, and be involved in some other activity. Like that should be sort of part of the Bill of Rights. If you want to play 2 sports or 3 sports and be involved in 7, that becomes like a privilege. Okay, you're doing well in school. Your grades are great. You seem mentally healthy. Okay, you can also learn to play the trumpet if you'd like. But I think that's becoming really hard. I mean, even my daughter, who was pretty academically sound, beyond that, was a dancer. That's all she did. She's a ballet dancer in high school. And that seemed overwhelming at times. Yeah. And she'd be up at 3 o'clock. I would never forget coming into her room because I saw the light. I was like, honey, it's 2 o'clock. You need to go to bed. And she was making a driver's ed poster. I'm like, no. Put that poster away. Just do tomorrow. I'm like, it looks good. I mean, she was making it like functional. Like when you move the blinker, like a little light went on. I'm like, I think you're going a little overboard with the driver's ed poster. But, it was amazing the glut of work that they would get at times. 3 tests and 2 papers. I'm like, don't your teachers talk to each other? Like, I'm making them have a paper due. Okay, well, I'll push mine back to next week because I know you've got to. That's what happened when I was in high school. Like Miss Ankrum knew Mr. Johnson was giving a test. Sure. She'd be like, all right, I'm going to push the test back, but only 2 days. I know Mr. Johnson's giving you a test. That doesn't happen anymore. So everything's intense. And when you add the electronics to it, it's interesting that your daughter's a 5th grade teacher and she's seeing it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer there is, because sometimes I would be like, look, the schools would say, hey, Chris, if you think your kids are overwhelmed, write a note and we'll excuse them, or, from that work so they can get their sleep. But the work's still due at some point. And then there's more work coming on. So I think in the book I wrote about the conveyor belt in I Love Lucy, and they got behind and the chocolates are everywhere. And it's really funny. It only works if you stop the conveyor belt. So simply saying, okay, well, they don't have to do the driver's ed poster, they can turn it in tomorrow, is not necessarily helpful. And if there's more work coming down the pike, so it's tomorrow's no better than tonight. Now just have another driver's ed poster. So I don't know. My wife's very anti-homework in a lot of situations as an educator. I mean, she studied this at a very high level. And initially I was kind of like, no way, how can you learn math out of homework? But the more I'm around it, the more I feel like, yeah, you should be able to get this stuff done during the 8 hours that you're in school. Like, what are you doing with that time? Like, if we need another 5 outside of school I don't know. I don't have the solution for that, but it's a big sleep problem.
What about the other side of the coin? So that's the conveyor belt. What about just the choice? Because she's talking about these kids. It's not because they're doing the homework she gave them. It's not because they have sports. It's because they're just hanging out. They got TikTok rolling. They're on their YouTube channel. They are like, oh, mom and dad don't know. It was like you and I might have read a book in bed and had the flashlight. They have the flashlight built into this little device that they could. So anything you've seen be helpful, even on a marginal level, for either teachers or parents with that.
We're looking for incremental gains here.
Exactly.
Because if the pandemic has done anything, it has taken that final step of let's fully integrate your child's computer with school to the point where when I walk up the steps, I'm sure my kid just hits a button and goes from shooting people and taking their belongings to parabolic math or whatever we're working on. So, hey, Dad, I've just been working on parabolic math. Nothing to see here.
Way to go, son.
So one of the things I think is helpful is electronics and computers sleep in the kitchen. So you want to check your phone or, update your TikTok dance or whatever, you can do it, but you need to come out of your bedroom, come downstairs and do it in front of everybody. I mean, when we were growing up, we had a 30-ton television that sat in the middle of the living room, and we had our video game hooked up to it. When my dad got upset with us, he would just take the cord. That was it. There was no way around Bill Winter taking the power cord to the Nintendo, so that way. And then you were also doing it in front of people. You know what I'm saying? So like you get the comments, this looks like a big waste of time. Like I remember your parents saying that when you're playing Mario, but there was no deviant kind of situation going on because that TV, everybody could see it. They're not up. I wasn't in my room doing it like, and so I think it's really difficult now to sort of pull those things apart. They've kind of fused now. And you can say, well, I'm just going to take your kid's phone away. Well, now he can't communicate with his club that he runs at school. All of his assignments go through there. It becomes more difficult. It's like, I'm taking away your left arm. Right. I mean, it's, they need it for other things now. It's not purely entertainment, even though that toggle between schoolwork and important things and entertainment is
it's constant. Yeah.
So to me, having that at least separated from the bedroom, I think makes a lot of sense. We've tried like the parental devices and things, but the only one that I ever see that really works is when you literally shut the Wi-Fi off in your house. You know what I mean? Like it's like the power grid goes down. Right. So it's now, because I always feel like the security and all that stuff, kids get around it.
Right.
They're so smart about this stuff. Like
they get it more than we do.
They've downloaded from YouTube. Hey, you want to get around the parental controls on your thing? Here's what you do. Like, and the little tutorial walks you right through it. So I think the only way you can do it is to shut it all down. But, we had this rule that you plug in phones and my son just made a fake phone out of a piece of wood and stuck it in an iPhone case. Every night's like, here it is, Dad, right here. Boop, and you put it in there and you're like, great. And then one night the power went out and came back on. And I noticed all the phones except his. I'm like, I guess this isn't charging. So I walked over, not even a phone.
My word.
Anyway, So, and he's up there, watching cats play piano or whatever.
Exactly. I'm good.
But these are addictive. I mean, I'm a neurologist. I mean, we deal in neurotransmitters, and make no mistake, we're all addicted to them, and kids especially. And if they could smash it up and snort it, they would. I mean, it's just. Even the games, like if you think back to the games we played, they were hard. Like you'd go in, you put the quarter in the Donkey Kong machine, and 20 seconds later, your game was over. Like it was terrible. Like this is so hard to even get past the first level. Now the games are so easy. They give you all this kind of positive feedback. Hey, you've gone a 3-day streak of playing our game. If you go 7 days, we give you a little star. And like, who cares?
I need the star.
Yeah. The star. I need the star. I got a streak. I love, my kids can be like really sick. They're like, Dad, I need you to keep my Snapchat.
Keep the Snapchat streak.
You promise me you'll do this for me. Like, yes, son. Yes, son.
I'm here for you. Exactly.
I mean, it's really important to them. And it's just kind of like click, they take pictures of their forehead and send it to their buddy just so this streak is alive.
Right.
And I mean, these people are very smart who create these games.
Oh, it's
and so
genius.
your daughter is definitely outmatched there a little bit.
Yeah. All right. I'm watching the clock. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I got a couple more for you. Insomnia tricks. You've talked a little bit about some things, how to approach it, how to think it through. There's a bunch of these hacks, and I hate that word, on the internet. Are there a few foundational approaches for people that feel like, you know what, I really am struggling with that. I know I'm awake. My device tells me I'm awake. Any guidance you can give those folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing, if you're using a device, what's to me is a helpful thing is, let's take the upcoming month of October. You make sure your little device is charged. And I like this one because it'll last a month on one charge. The problem with some devices are they need to be charged every day. So your data is kind of sporadic. Or I love like a device that goes underneath your bed. So you don't even have to worry about wearing something as long as you're in your bed, it's measuring you. So you take the month of October or the first 2 weeks of October and just forget about it. And then at the end of those 2 weeks or whatever that time period is, answer the question, how much sleep did I average over this 14-day period? And you'll get a number, let's call it 7. Now ask the question, what is your typical bedtime and wake time? And for a lot of people who struggle with sleep, I find that this is their time in bed, and this is how much they're averaging their sleep. And so what I often say is people are not looking for sleep. Like I can't sleep. You got to help me sleep. That's not the problem. They're looking for sleep that's predictable. They like things in order. Okay, I want my coffee in the morning, and then I do my emails, and then I check in with HR, and then we have 3 meetings. They're like, they live a structured life, which is great. But their structure for their sleep is not congruent with how much they need. So if this is how much you need, and then this bigger amount is how much you're spending in time in bed, you're already setting yourself up for inefficiency. And that's where you ask the question. If somebody says to me, hey, Chris, it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep every night, my first question is, how do you feel about that? If the answer is, oh, I love it, then I don't see any problem with that. If it's, oh, it drives me crazy, it's a living nightmare, it fries my brains, as one person told me. Okay, well, maybe it might be better, instead of going to bed at 9, going to bed closer to 11. And it's amazing how many patients over the years have said, I've never thought about that, or that me blessing them and saying, you may go to bed at 11 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock, and you'll still live to be, a healthy life, is really freeing to them, because they really felt like 9 to 7 was optimal because it was optimal for their mother or optimal for their partner. And so me saying, hey, look, your brain's telling you that it doesn't really want to go to sleep at 9. So why don't you go to bed at 11? It's okay. Like, you can almost see this visibly, a weight lifted from them. So I think that's really important, because now all of a sudden your sleep need is matching that opportunity. The other thing I think is really important is when there is a hiccup in the night, to be very careful with making up for it with a nap during the day. Well, it took me 2 hours to fall asleep last night, so I get a little gift card for a free 2 hours of sleep during the day that I can utilize anytime I want. The conversation you really want to have with your brain is, I'm going to keep my end of the bargain, which is I'm going to allot 7 or 8 hours for you every night to sleep. Now, use it or don't use it, I don't care, but that's what you're going to get. In fact, this is the conversation I had with my kids when they were very young. You can go to bed whenever you want to. I don't really care. Just be in your room, be quiet, no screens, no blocks of wood. But I'm going to wake you up every day at this time with a smile, nicely. It's not punitive. It's just, this is our schedule. Welcome to the Naval Academy. But what happens is people will have a difficult night, and then they take a 2-hour nap, and then they struggle to fall asleep that next night because they just woke up from their 2-hour nap. Now, the exception to me is if you can nap and it doesn't interfere with your ability to sleep and you like a little 30-minute refresher, then that's fine. Keeping that on a schedule is good. The other thing is when it's through no fault of your own. Like last night, I should have gotten in closer to 1. I got in at 4. That wasn't my fault. It's because the car, there was a problem with getting it ordered. So in that situation, if I wanted to take a nap today, I think that's justified. I would have slept, but somebody prevented me from it. The flight, the friend in a crisis kept me up. My kids were sick and I was dealing with that. So I think that, what I always tell people is figure out how much sleep you need. Make that and multiply it by 7. So if you're a 7-hour guy, 7 hours, that's 49 hours a week. So your job is to get 49 hours a week. So if Tuesday night, your friend from college calls and says, I'm going through a divorce, and you're up pretty late talking to him and, trying to comfort him and be a good friend, but you only get 5 hours that night, then I think that you need to look ahead over the next 3 or 4 days and think, when can I make up that sleep? Can I go to bed a little bit early? Can I take a little nap? Because by Sunday, I need to have that 40. It's like a credit card. That's what I was telling the man. I was like, you've got a little credit card and I need you to pay that debt off every week. And if you have a crazy night because the LA show was awesome, hey, listen, you're a rock star, you go for it. But you still have to pay that credit card off. Otherwise, the interest and the late fees will kill you literally.
Chris, just that section was so valuable. This is huge. This is huge. Okay, so you're rocking it. You didn't need sleep last night. Just think how good you'd be on sleep.
Fire today.
All right, last question, then we'll wrap this thing up.
I should be bad because I want to give your listeners the idea that, hey, wait a minute.
What's wrong with that guy?
Over the last couple of days and seems to be cognitively in a good place right now.
What's happening over there?
I'm not. This is adrenaline and cortisol.
Is that Superman? All right. So last one, future sleep medicine. I've talked about my son has an interest in this. You're engrossed in this as a neurologist and focusing on it as an author. Where do you think we're heading over the next? It's come so far. It seems like a decade ago, nobody talked about sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But now it seems to be maybe overly focused. What's happening on the medical side? Where are we going with this a decade from now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think we are in sort of the Wild West phase of everybody's got a product or a mattress or a thing, and a lot of them are really cool. I think over the next few years, that will get pruned a little bit in the sense that we'll find out the devices and the technology that really works.
Sure.
And I think people will get much better sources of information. I work with sleep.com and we're really trying to create a portal of excellent sleep information for people that's not being, manipulated by commercial interests and things of that nature, and really trying to tell a more elevated story about sleep. I do think that we're seeing this weird collision of wearables on the consumer side and then the medical technology, like if you had a sleep study, where the wearables are starting to rival the sleep studies. So in other words, in 5 or 10 years, I think that device that you're wearing or is when I saw built into your glasses. So it's actually measuring brain activity because it's touching your, that we're going to come to a place where that information we're getting from what you bought on Amazon is as good, if not better, than what you get in a sleep study. And it's already kind of better because you're getting this longitudinal look at you versus that one night 6 months ago, you slept in a sleep center.
In a weird place.
And it was a weird place. And you were kind of creeped out by the camera above your head and you didn't think it was a great night. And it probably wasn't. So I think that we're going to get we're getting more information. And the problem we've had with technology in the past was, hey, Brad, you got 22% REM sleep, 17% deep sleep, and your sleep efficiency was 83. And you're like, okay.
And that means, yeah, exactly.
So I think that meaning is starting to get injected in a lot of these things a lot more, and maybe even beyond meaning. What do I do about this? Like, is this good? Like, should I be changing what I drink? Is this too much coffee? I don't really understand what this means. I think the meaning and the coaching is starting to develop a little bit more too. I mean, even something as simple as my bed sends me a text and says, it's time to go to bed. That's really helpful to me. I'm like engrossed in something and scheduling with Brad or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, it is. Oh, wow, it's time for bed. Because if I hadn't gotten that text, I would have charged right through and been like, oh my gosh, it's already 1 o'clock. I just lost track of time. So now if I stay up, I'm making a choice to be unhealthy rather than it kind of slipped my mind. Wow. You know, I see in the future, what I would love is getting a text and then the TV goes off, my laptop goes off, and everything in the living room shuts down.
You have 30 seconds.
But I don't think that I would. I think if everything shut down, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to bed, because it's too much hassle to me to go around and turn lights on and get the cable box turned back on again. So I think that the future, there'll be a smarter home where after dinner, the temperature is dropping automatically via the thermostat. The light, the blue-green light in your light bulbs is diminishing, even though you can't tell it by looking at it with your naked eye. You know, the bedroom is cooler. It's more, your partner has their own zone and you have your own zone. So I think that more integrated household leading you to better sleep will be there, and kind of coaching you the next morning. Hey, this is what happened. Like even my device kind of picks up when I'm not exercising. Hey, you haven't gone on your run in a while. Maybe today you should. So I'm not dependent on my wife saying, you're really irritable. Go run.
I need to get out there.
Go run. Like, you know, go get on it. So I think that's what's coming. I think it's all very exciting. And it's exciting because people are excited.
Yeah.
This all wouldn't be happening if we weren't excited about sleep. And it's fun to be a part of that, actually.
Chris, this is so good. So I found you through Twitter. You're a great follow on Twitter. We'll have links to your books. For people that want to follow, they're thinking, man, this guy's so interesting. He's got so much good stuff. Where's the best way to keep track of you? You want to throw out your Twitter? You got other sites?
You can reserve the judgment on that until you followed me for a little while. You may or may not find but sleep is interesting intrinsically, even if I'm not. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Dr. Chris Winter. So it's at DrChrisWinter. And then I've got a website, www.wchriswinter.com.
Okay.
My books are on Amazon, Kindle, Audible. The Sleep Solution was my first one, and then The Rested Child is the second one. Appreciate the support. Love to get feedback from people, even if this is terrible and it's not what somebody said, not even fit to recycle, which I thought was that's a strong statement. Like, what do you do with it if it's not fit to recycle? Bury it in a mason jar or something. I was like, wow, okay. But that's okay. Like, criticism is good. You know, I don't like just to hear the positives. But you know, as I told people, and I told my publisher, I said, this book, my first book, I said, I think it's going to average 2.5 stars on Amazon. She said, what do you mean? I said, because I think it's either going to get a 5-star or 0 star. It's going to be very polarizing. But as I told her, I said, it's okay, because I don't mind being the bad cop. Like, this is wrong the way you're thinking about sleep. Even if your doctor, who's gotten a total of 30 minutes of sleep training in his life, is telling you something, you know, I don't mind because every time I see that 1-star review, I thought, aha, I reached that person. Right. And I put a little viral thought in their head that it's upsetting at first, but maybe over time they go back to their primary care doctor. This guy says that I do sleep, and I don't sleep without this Ambien, right? And I hope that doctor says, well, he's actually right. Like, the Ambien doesn't make you sleep. In fact, you know, so anyway, I don't mind playing that role. That's okay.
Well, it's a huge role. Thank you. Thanks for bringing all this to us in a fun, engaging way. This is awesome. Yeah, this is awesome. I appreciate
you getting the word out, man. I really do. And I really, it's been very enjoyable.
I'll tell you, sleep is a struggle for me personally, so I was really looking forward to this one. I hope you found it to be a powerful resource, maybe for yourself, family, friends, or maybe even your own coaching clients. Again, Dr. Winter's 2 best-selling books are titled The Sleep Solution and The Rested Child. Thanks for tuning into the #1 podcast for health and wellness coaching. We are here. If you have any questions about health and wellness coaching, either on a personal level, something you want to do with your career, or organizational level, something you want to integrate into your wellness program for your employees, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or there are plenty of additional resources on the website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Next week's episode is a hidden gem, and it's one of your favorites over the past 3 years. It features one of the most encouraging, engaging individuals you will hear anywhere, Wendy Earlbeck. And she'll be discussing the realities of creatine and how it has value for all of us, whether or not we ever find ourselves lifting heavy pieces of iron in the gym. Now it's time to be a catalyst, the chance to make a positive difference in the world while simultaneously improving our own lives, which is the essence of being a catalyst. This is Dr. Bradford Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute. Make it a great rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.